What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham Giuseppe Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network. Today we're talking the latest documentary to air after NXT last Wednesday called Tommaso Ciampa, blackHEART. Now, if you're subscribed to the WWE's Performance Center YouTube channel, then you've probably already seen this documentary. As soon as I started watching it, I knew it looked familiar. The footage looked familiar. It's because they took the two videos that they filmed and posted many months ago, right after Tommaso Ciampa had surgery, back in March and April, right after he had come back for that quick cameo at TakeOver New York. They posted this on the YouTube channel. There was part one and then part two. And I remember it very clearly because I remember after watching part one, I knew they could not bring this guy back as a heel because he came across as way too likable in this video. In the series of videos that they had done leading up to his, road to recovery and his comeback just recently, which is not covered here in this documentary. They mention nothing about him coming back to the ring, which just happened, 2 weeks ago, about a week and a half ago at this point. I think he's wrestling his first match back, actually, next week against Angel Garza, which would be great. But yeah, they basically took the two videos that are already up now on YouTube and put them up together into one documentary, if you can even really call it that. They did the same thing with those Matt Riddle videos they took about a year ago and smoshed it into one, pseudo-documentary on the network called Matt Riddle Arrival. And it was great, and the videos were awesome. But again, if you're subscribed to the PC YouTube channel, then you've seen this before. That doesn't mean you shouldn't watch it again, though. Even if you have seen those videos from the PC YouTube channel, they are absolutely well worth watching again. That's how great this documentary is. It's not exactly sure. It does clock in at around 28, 29 minutes. But again, it's well worth the watch, especially if you're a Tommaso Ciampa fan. And if you're not, you will be after watching this documentary. So we kick it off with Triple H announcing to the NXT locker room that Tommaso Ciampa is injured, and Ciampa has surgery days later. His family's with him, that being his wife, I believe her name is Jessie, and their daughter. I forgot what her name was, but Tommaso Ciampa actually admits that his wife, Jessie, came up with the whole Goldie gimmick for the NXT Championship, because I believe Tommaso, or either maybe herself, had called their daughter Goldie. So he would use that to call the NXT Championship while he was the NXT Champion and kind of personalize the title, make it feel more meaningful than it was, make it feel really personal to Tommaso Ciampa. So he has cervical neck surgery, and he talks about how the injury just kept getting worse. And it's been hurting him for a while, I guess, a couple years, maybe by this point, but he never wanted to take time off to get it fixed, because in wrestling, you never really want to do that, especially as you get hotter and hotter and hotter. And he had surgery a couple years ago after TakeOver Chicago 1 in May of 2017, but that was for his torn ACL or whatever that was. So he took time off for that, and then his other knee, but never had the neck addressed until now. So after he came back to the ring in early 2018, he just kept getting stingers, which, I mean, again, I've never had one before, so I can't accurately describe it. But I know Daniel Bryan talked about having one of those years ago, and I guess it's not something normal that you have happen to you. But, I guess it was a result of the neck, and because he had tweaked something with his neck and his neck was hurting him, the more bumps that he took, the more his neck would be killing him, and he would be feeling numbness in his fingers and stuff like that. I guess that's essentially what a stinger is, if not to some certain extent. But anyway, Johnny Gargano knew about this, and he praised his toughness, saying, hey, regardless of how hurt this guy was, he wanted to keep pushing forward. But as soon as Tommaso Ciampa said that he was hurting, and his wife had said he's not the complaining type. He's not the type of person to say, oh, I'm hurting, this hurts, that hurts. So when he did start complaining, they knew it was serious. Both Johnny and his wife had known, not Johnny's wife, Candice, but Tommaso's wife, Jessie, knew, okay, it's something serious, and it's got to be the neck. So, Tommaso did the Raw taping, he did the SmackDown taping when he and Johnny debuted on the main roster back, I want to say in February. He then did the Wednesday Full Sail taping, where they did the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic stuff and things like that. He went to Raw the following week. I forgot what match he was supposed to be in. I think they were advertising some sort of a match. Maybe Johnny against Cesaro or DIY against the Bar again. I forget what the exact match was, but it was pulled at the last minute, leading to speculation that there was something going on there with Johnny and Tommaso Ciampa. So while he was at Raw, we find out he didn't pass a physical because he had, all this pain in his body and his neck specifically, and he had it checked out, and he found out he couldn't pass the physical. And he also found out that the surgery had to happen right then and there. Okay, maybe not right there, but like days later, not a week later, not a month later. They couldn't hold out. They couldn't hold out until after TakeOver New York. Unfortunately, they couldn't finish the story with him and Johnny Gargano over the NXT Championship. This 4-year feud had to be abruptly stopped because Ciampa had to get surgery. So Ciampa apologized to Johnny for the story having to be stopped because he had to go get surgery. Johnny said that he actually teared up when he told him that because he felt so bad about the whole thing happening. This was Johnny's moment as much as it was, Tommaso's, because the whole story was Johnny beating Tommaso for the NXT Championship. And his wife, while heartbroken, was also relieved because at least he could finally get it addressed. He could finally get the injury addressed and not be in pain anymore. He also tells a story, a really sad story, about how he and his wife Jessie years ago could not have kids originally. So they chose Vitro. Again, I'm not overly familiar with this stuff, so I forget exactly what it's called. But it was at that point that Tommaso was hired by NXT. So this must be going back to like 2016, late 2015. He moved to Orlando, but because his wife had to stay behind because they were, in the process of having this baby, and she might have been still working there or whatever in, I want to say Wisconsin. He moved in at that point with Johnny and Candice, and they really helped him get acclimated with Orlando and the Florida area. So right before she was about to have this baby, they went out to the restaurant, Johnny, Candice, Jessie, and Tommaso, to celebrate the new baby. The announcement, they were about to make the announcement, and it was at the restaurant that his wife raced over to the restroom and found out, I guess she had a miscarriage, must have been what it was. They never outright said that word for word, but that's kind of the gist that I got from what Tommaso was talking about here. So I guess she had a miscarriage. Obviously, they're heartbroken. One of the worst things they can have happen to you. Absolutely terrible. And it was around that time that Tommaso had to take time off for other injuries anyway. So this must be late 2016, early 2017. So he took time off for the other injuries and kind of get his head on straight after all this other bad news he was getting. And he said they were down to their last embryo. And again, I'm not overly familiar with this process, but they had one more shot to have this baby, and it worked. They had the baby, and he said that their daughter, that was, I believe, born maybe later on in 2017, early 2018, changed his entire perspective on life. So as a result of having this kid, he realized, okay, I got to get my neck fixed earlier than I would like. So that's why he had the surgery as opposed to holding it off. And he said everything the last couple of months, or at that point anyway, before he got hurt recently, was the perfect storm. He had the baby. He underwent the successful surgery earlier this year. He was champion for a while. Everything was going well for him. Or rather, he was the champion. He had the baby. Everything was going great. And then he got hurt. But the surgery went well. It was successful. And then he was told by the doctor the recovery could be anywhere from 3 to 12 months. It's a neck issue, so it's really all, it really is all determined on that person, I guess. It's not a standard thing where, you can be back in, 6 months or 12 months, whatever. Like Edge came back from a neck injury within, 5 or 6 months back in 2009, 2010 after being estimated to be out for 12 months. John Cena was supposed to be out for like a year. He came back in 3 months, but that's a different issue because it's John fucking Cena. Tommaso came back in 6 months, about 6-7 months. He was injured in March, and he came back in October. Now, he hasn't wrestled yet, but he will be wrestling next week, so Tommaso Ciampa is ready to go, which is great. And obviously, they don't talk about that here because this was filmed before we found out that Tommaso Ciampa was cleared to compete as of a few weeks ago. But he's also very relieved, and we see him in the hospital bed. He's in the hospital bed, and he's very relieved about not having to pay for this surgery, not having to worry about getting his neck fixed and worrying about the bill coming in the mail the next day, because WWE has the entire thing covered, which is really cool. He knew that even as he got hurt, after getting hurt, he knew that regardless of what the outcome would be, whether he would come back or not, and he always knew he would come back. But even if he didn't, he knew there would always be a place for him in WWE, whether it be as a wrestler, as a backstage coach, whatever, a lot like what Jason Jordan has now. He wasn't so fortunate. A lot of people forget about Jason Jordan. He had a neck injury about a year and a half ago, it's been long enough where I don't think he's coming back. The same way that Tyson Kidd didn't come back from his neck injury about 4 years ago, and he's been working as a producer for WWE ever since. And Tommaso said that he's really grateful for that, and he appreciates WWE for all that they've done for him over the last number of years. So Ciampa goes to the TV taping to talk about it, and Triple H says that Tommaso Ciampa's injury, his setback, is devastating, and said that TakeOver New York really should have been his moment. Obviously, Johnny was going to come out of that thing the new NXT champion no matter what. But that was every bit as, Tommaso's moment as it was Johnny's, because Ciampa helped played a part in that story and make it as big as it was. He was champion for almost 9 months. A lot of people forget about that too before he had to relinquish that championship due to injury. So now, when this part of the documentary has been recorded, the video on YouTube, whatever, he is now a week removed from surgery. He's getting better. He's healing well. He's spending a lot of time at home with his family, with his dogs, with his baby, with his wife. And he's really just kind of taking it day by day, making the time pass by, and going from being on the road all the time to now being at home, resting his neck, is a complete 180, obviously, but he's taking the whole process well, at least from what we see here. We also find out, according to Johnny, that his hands aren't going numb anymore, which is great. Very good news. He talks about that he's very fortunate to have a home life and be home with his wife, with his baby, with his dogs, and enjoying all that. So he goes to the NXT TV taping, the final NXT TV taping before TakeOver New York, as I mentioned earlier. While there, Triple H addresses the injury in front of the entire locker room and in front of all the talent. He calls up Ciampa to talk about it, which he does. He says, while all teary-eyed and everything else, that NXT is his home. He fucking loves NXT. It's his real first home in pro wrestling. And he says that he loves Johnny like a brother. And, it's a real unfortunate time for him to have to relinquish the NXT championship, but he's going to work through it and appreciates everyone's support. And for his wife, she says that it means the world for her to be with her husband throughout this entire process, which is cool. So he also travels to New York for TakeOver itself. He didn't know if you'd be ready to go, if you wanted to be there, obviously not having to be able to compete. He didn't know if you'd be, emotionally ready to be there for that moment, but he knew he could not miss Johnny's big moment. So while there, we get to hear from Edge, which is really cool. Shawn Michaels, who talks about how he was at the Raw where Tommaso found out he couldn't compete anymore. He found out that he couldn't pass the physical. So it was a really emotional day for everybody. And Michaels doesn't go to a lot of Raws, but he was at that one. And Edge, who obviously has a lot of experience and history with neck injuries, says that there's a lot more to it than just wrestling. And you got to get yourself fixed first before you can worry about anything else, including wrestling. And he said that people with neck injuries, they can bond regardless of what their backgrounds are. People like himself, Tyson Kidd, Lita, Jason Jordan, they can all kind of bond with each other because they've all had neck injuries over the course of their careers. Triple H says that Tommaso, he would text him all the time, that Tommaso would text Triple H saying, oh, what if I didn't do this? Maybe this wouldn't have happened, blah, blah, blah. And Triple H says, you can't think like that. Stop saying stuff like that. You can't regret anything you've done. You're dealt a hand, you just got to deal with it. You're dealt a hand, and you just got to take it and make the most of it of what you will. You just got to make the most of what you have in any given situation, which I completely agree with. Shawn Michaels says that there's nothing more important than family, and Tommaso getting to spend his time with his family during his time off is crucial and imperative and important, which is awesome. Tommaso says that he really wanted to be a part of that moment with Johnny being at that show, and he was there. He did pop up at the very, very end of the event to celebrate with Johnny as the new NXT champion. Candice there as well, and Johnny's entire family in the front row. Great documentary. Again, you've probably seen this before. If you are subscribed to the PC YouTube channel on YouTube, check it out. It's awesome. But if you want to catch it in full, uninterrupted, watch it right here on the WWE Network, called Tommaso Ciampa, blackHEART. It's awesome, especially if you're a big Tommaso Ciampa fan. But again, even if you're not, watch it, and you probably will be by the time it's over. It's that good. And the PC YouTube channel continues to pump out awesome content. So let this serve as a bit of a promo, a bit of a plug for the WWE Performance Center YouTube channel. It's amazing content for stuff like this, a lot like the Matt Riddle Arrival series from last year. But anyway, guys, thank you for checking out my review of Tommaso Ciampa blackHEART. Very much appreciate your support of the show and the channel. Be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content, including more network and chills, which should be up in the days ahead. I believe this is going up on Monday because I had all my videos up from AEW Dynamite go up on Sunday. So a bit delayed, so I apologize for that. But whatever airs after Raw tonight, if there is new content airing after Raw tonight as we speak, then I will be breaking it down hopefully tomorrow here on the channel. So until then, guys, have a great rest of your week. Enjoy Columbus Day. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.